Abs are made in the kitchen and other bullshit you find on the internet. Is there?
That should be the title. Abs are made in the kitchen and other BS.
I like it. Okay. Well, title is done. Hello, and welcome to Middleish, the podcast about moderation in all things. I am Erin Green.
And I am Michael Gray.
And I can't stop giggling at Michael making these funny gestures at me as soon as we're supposed to introduce the podcast.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I was just smiling at you, just encouraging you, like, hey, here we go.
Thumbs up.
I believe in you,
eyebrows.
Partner.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel good. How are you?
He feels good. I'm good. Yeah, things are.
That was a song that I had on our reel last time. If anybody hasn't gone to Instagram actually and seen the reel from last week, that's the song I had on there.
How should I eat that one?
Mm-hmm. I should just have you sing it for me next time.
I will. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. The next jingle is on you, Michael.
Okay. Yeah, that was a good one. You set the bar pretty high with that one. I was like, crap.
Oh.
So Erin and I, we kind of alternate weeks, like with kind of who's manning the Middleish Instagram account. And last week she knocked it out of the park, and I was like, damn it, now I gotta do something awesome.
It was Erin eating a few foods, looking at the camera.
Yeah, but it was clever.
With music behind it.
It was clever and fun. Yeah, it was clever and fun.
You're clever and fun. You bring the A game every week to this podcast, making me laugh. So
I don't know about last week. Last week after my Pioneer Fantasy Camp,
a little zombified.
But I will say, editing it just yesterday, I talked a whole lot more than I thought I did. Yeah,
no, you did great.
I brought it. It may have been my B+ game, but it was. Yeah, I passed.
No, I'm pretty proud of you, because when we got on and started recording, I was like, oh, Nelly. Oh, poor guy.
And then afterwards I crashed.
I'm sure you did. Yeah.
But no, I'm good. It's been so nice just to like this week have like a regular rhythm to things, like Tuesday, yesterday, felt really good because Lida still didn't have school Monday. So they were out for a whole week with that winter storm, and Monday too. And so Tuesday, just like she was in school, it was like just a really normal work day for me, just kind of that routine and everything. I was like, okay, things feel like we're back. So
good.
Yeah, I feel better.
It's a nice feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of amazing how much we rely on those routines, right?
I love
and
routines.
Just that normalcy, and that
mm-hmm.
You kind of know what to expect, and things work when you go flip on a light switch or something simple that we take for granted.
I swear I looked at like my oven and microwave clocks 30 times during those like 3 days. I never
was work.
Like, don't look. Yeah. Speaking of routines.
Jeez.
Yeah, but no, we're good. Things good up there?
Good. Yeah. I mean, it's a sunny day, and it's kind of felt a little more seasonable lately. And my cat is keeping me company today, which is always nice. And
nice.
Yeah,
nice.
We're just, Matt and I are going to go for a mountain bike trip to try out. We have a new camper top for our pickup, so we got a Go Fast camper.
I saw that.
Pop-up.
It's like,
yeah,
it's so cool.
Sick.
It's
I
so
know.
rad.
Yeah, we're so excited.
I didn't know things like that existed. I saw it in your stories, and I was like, whoa, what is going on here?
Yeah, this has been a dream of Matt's for a while now, and it's been in the making for a couple of years, because they're built in Montana. And so you had to like kind of reserve your place in line, and then COVID happened and all of this other stuff. Anyway, we finally got it last fall, and we happened to get it on the very last nice weekend. And I was driving to get back down to Boise, which wasn't going to happen until later that week. So we missed that nice weather window, and we took it out one time, and it was so effing cold. We were like you're fine in the tent and like in your sleeping bags and all cuddled up, But man, if you want to get out and make coffee or food or move around, it just was like miserable. So we haven't taken it out yet. And we've spent the winter months just getting some accessories and some, setting it up. And of course, Matt has done like all of it, which is awesome. He's really put a lot of like research and YouTubing into this whole thing. And so we are going to, we're kind of looking ahead at where do we want to go and how do we want to plan this trip that we're taking at the end of March.
So. Nice.
Yay.
We're going camping for spring break, and that'll be the first time with the 4 of us. And definitely the first time with 2 dogs.
I was going to say, you mean the 6 of you?
Yeah, it could be interesting with puppies who are still, puppies.
Yeah.
I think it's going to go well. It may be miserable. We may come back, 3 nights early and we're only going for 4 nights. But we'll see.
That'll be interesting. I bet you guys will be fine.
I think it'll be fun. Yeah. I think we'll have a good time. Yeah.
Yay. I know it's finally feeling a little bit spring-ish. And of course the big challenge with planning anything through the winter is like, lodging and travel and COVID and all of the business that you have to think about. But when camping season starts, when you can actually get outside and just sleep, wherever, in a campground or out in the wilderness, then it gets a lot easier to start planning getaways. So I'm excited. And I have a new mountain bike. So
that's exciting.
Yay.
Oh, is that your happy dance? Is that how that goes?
That's my happy dance. Yeah. If Matt ever listens to this episode and ever watches the YouTube, oh, Michael, you're laughing. It's the happy dance.
I like it.
And
if I were you, I would trademark that ASAP because someone is going to steal that as soon as they see this.
I actually stole it. I stole it from a friend of mine in college because she would do it. And like, there's a little hip wiggle you do with it. And there's like a little, like.
If you are listening to this, stop right now and go to YouTube. Look at your timestamp. Go to YouTube and watch this because you really need to see what's happening.
I didn't even stand up and do the whole thing, but Matt loves it so much that if we like place a bet, like if we're playing cribbage or like something, he's like, you have to do the happy dance. Like that's his, if he wins or like if he wins the bet, you have to do the happy dance. Yeah, I don't know. Great. He likes it.
It's great. So did you ever watch Seinfeld?
Oh, that's another one that I'm almost through The Office. I'll watch Seinfeld next.
Okay.
But I know some of the punchlines.
Do you know, have you ever seen Elaine's dance?
Yes. Yes.
So it's not bad like that, but it's fun like that. It's real fun.
It has some character to it.
It's got a lot of character. A little bit of quirk.
Not something that everybody can pull off. I mean,
oh no, I like it.
Unique little movement. Okay, that's funny. Well,
all right.
I know, and a mountain bike brings the happy. So I'll do happy dance all day with a new mountain bike.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, do we have a topic? we
we do this. We could just BS. Everybody can listen
30
to
minutes
us
later.
We do have a topic, and I think we're warming up for that topic because
I think so.
We, Michael and I usually do some kind of preparation or structure for our topics to make sure that we, kind of follow a train of thought and trajectory through our podcast. But today, I think this is just going to be a rather organic rant against diet culture and
shooting
internet
from the hip a bit today,
memes, and really what I think what kicked this off was that quote. I don't know if maybe you brought it up when we were planning like topics and things we should talk about, but
like a year ago.
Literally a year ago. Abs are made in the kitchen.
Abs are made in the kitchen. Yeah.
And other BS. I think we decided that's going to be the title of this because
I think we got that. Yeah. So I don't know who brought it up. One of us threw that out there. It's just kind of a thing that we hate that you hear a lot. And we thought, wouldn't it be great to just address some of these like common seemingly motivational things or inspiring things that are just thrown around the fitness and nutrition and diet industries that you see people repost a lot, people say a lot, that seem to like the objective is to motivate, to inspire, to get you going, and but really what's behind them is just a lot of BS and a lot of actually like really damaging messaging that just honestly pisses Aaron and I off that it's out there and that it's said so much, especially when it's so much of it is untrue and hurtful.
Yeah. Yeah. And the abs are made in the kitchen one is, I mean, sure, if we're talking about, people who are seeking weight loss and making changes to their lifestyle, and some people, there's nothing wrong with seeking weight loss. There is nothing wrong with wanting to improve your health, your life, or change the way you eat or take care of yourself. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. What I take issue with is the notion that abs are, I mean, the fact that we should be seeking those abs, that physique, the look, and that abs, having visible abs and having this kind of chiseled or lean look is something we all should be striving for. And saying that they're quote made in the kitchen, I have a really hard time with the messaging that a lot of people translate that into, oh, I have to really change how I eat. And I mean, that usually doesn't translate into, I should eat things in moderation, does it?
No, it doesn't translate into like, let me improve my relationship with food and make sure like I'm nurturing my body. It's like, okay, it's time to get serious. It's time
Yes.
for the punishment and the pain so that I can maybe possibly quote unquote look good enough or whatever. And first of
Yep.
all, abs aren't made in the kitchen. They're there. You have abs. Like abs aren't made in the kitchen any more than like, your thighs or your sternocleidomastoid. Like all your muscles are there. They all exist. Okay. Like
Right.
like if you want to see a muscle, make it more visible, sure, that requires a certain level of leanness, but it's just a dumb saying, I think. Just aside from the damage it can do, it's just dumb. Like they aren't made in the kitchen. They're there. You all have apps. Okay. So
Yeah.
let's just get that out of the way.
Yeah. And I think, when I read through, I actually Googled that quote just to see what comes up. And of course, there's these articles that are talking about, people tend to see more results with dietary changes than with exercise alone. This is not earth shattering science.
Nope.
There is tons of evidence and recommendations out there, even if you go off of like a very, basic like dietary guidelines for Americans, or, some of the mainstream, just basic recommendations for health. We know that a combination of exercise and nutrition will help with long-term health. And that's what's recommended for people who are trying to lose weight, is to have a combination of
Right.
diet and exercise. And I think where some of that comes in is, if you look at the amount of time or, physical exertion it takes somebody to maybe, expend 500 calories, but that it can easily be consumed with a relatively small portion of food, depending on the food choice. I think that's where it comes
Right.
into play. However, then we're kind of getting into the calorie counting rabbit hole. And again, it totally negates everything you just said about relationship with food and how you feel about yourself and how you approach your eating throughout the day.
Right. Absolutely. And it just perpetuates this idea that being leaner is better or being
Yeah.
leaner is healthier. And it's just not. I mean, first of all, like there are a lot of, eating disorders that are strongly equated with being exceptionally lean that are dangerously unhealthy, like life-threateningly unhealthy, right? Like so okay, so we can't say leaner is better. That's stupid, right? That doesn't make any sense. But then just to equate like just, okay, well, maybe just like a moderate level of leanness is, more healthy than, maybe having 10 or 15 more pounds of extra body weight, than, or just body weight than that. It doesn't pan out like that. There's so many, and I think this is where that whole thin privilege thing comes in, right? There's so many assumptions about being thin. I can't tell you how many
Mm-hmm.
times I've had um, like a female client tell me like, well, my husband just eats this and this and this, but he's so healthy. He's so thin. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, those two don't have anything to do with each other. If you want to
Yeah.
tell me about how healthy he is, let's show me his blood work. Like, let's look at
Mm-hmm.
that, right? Because I've done a lot of thin, quote unquote, lean people that cholesterol's terrible, or their blood pressure's a disaster, or they have all these other conditions. Like, it doesn't mean anything. And the assumption that if you're not lean, you're automatically unhealthy is equally as stupid, because it depends on the individual, right? Like, someone may be healthier if they lose 10 or 15 pounds. That may improve some markers or their health. Some people may be more unhealthy if they do that. And of course, it depends on how you go about doing that as well. But it just perpetuates this idea that's just such bull crap. And really just, it does a lot of damage for people,
Yep.
thinking that
Yep.
their value and their worth and their health lies in, you know, starving themselves or being lean or whatever.
Well, and those people that are like, oh, my husband can eat whatever he wants, and I can't because I put on weight. Um, well, first of all, yes, beautiful job of dispelling that myth that thin equals healthy and that thin is automatically better. But also, let's pay attention to your physical and mental, emotional,
Exactly.
spiritual health.
And relationship
And
health. And yeah. Yeah.
yeah, everything about it. And I've had so many conversations with particularly women about this. You know, what are you hoping to gain from being thinner? Like, what does that mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
What feelings or, goals, whether it be, fitness or just daily things, like, what are you hoping to gain out of
Mm-hmm.
this? And often it's really just feeling better about themselves in their own skin. And then I'm brought back to diet culture and the messaging that
Mm-hmm.
we are given from the time we first recognize media, whether it's magazines,
Right.
TV, and now social media. There's this overriding message that there's like a badge of honor for restriction and that thin ideal. And just if you look at commercials and really pay attention to the body sizes and the different representation in commercials, it's rampant. And
Mm-hmm.
once you do start recognizing it, it becomes like just super blatant, like
Oh
how
yeah.
much of this we are conditioned to believe
Mm-hmm.
that this is the way which is why abs are made in the kitchen. I mean, we're conditioned to believe that having visible lean abdominals is desirable.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and
And it's
what
also, oh, go ahead.
oh, I was going to switch, so go ahead, keep
Okay. I
going.
was like, well, and just the idea that this is also like, that's the word. It's where we are right now. Like, there was a time where having more weight was desired, because that was a show, that showed, affluence and wealth and that
Mm,
kind of stuff. And so we have to look at it just kind of like where we are, and just, this point in history too, in that there really there's something to be said for what society imposes upon us. And that stuff changes, right? That ebbs and flows and that kind of stuff. It's not constant. Where you being healthy, that's a constant. What a healthy you looks like and what behaviors go into being healthy you, that's a constant. And this is way easier said than done. But it's really important to begin to try to step outside of what society is saying and really settle into like just what are just basic markers, for being a healthy person. What does that mean?
mhm.
What does being a healthy me mean? Outside of trends and that kind of stuff, because that stuff changes all the time, and it's going to keep changing. But a healthy you, it's going to be a healthy you, no matter what society is saying. So I just want to
Yeah.
throw that in there real quick.
No, and that's perfect actually, because it plays into what the next thought I had is, if people are so focused on how their body looks based on what society deems is desirable or what you should be striving toward, it totally neglects your genetics, your family history, your own history with food and weight and health. And I mean, whether that's somebody who comes from a line of body types that just does not lend itself to lean abdominals or lean thighs or like perfect shoulders or whatever it is your thing is, eye color or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And then it also neglects just who you are as a person and your own personal history. So I've had clients that are cancer survivors. I have clients of vast different ages. I have clients that have been through other physical challenges, whether they have gone through disordered eating, and so now they're trying to gain weight, and their frame is just so thin that they're like, okay, I kind of feel like people are still judging me and looking at me because, you know, maybe friends or family knew that they had an eating disorder, and now they just are not, like, their body just is not really built to be filled out and voluptuous. So there's that side of it too. And so, you know, I present this in saying that each individual has their story. You all have your own story, and your body has its own story. And people don't believe me when I say that you can do the work of changing how you appreciate and accept your body, and you can still make strides to be a healthier version of you,
Right.
in the kitchen, in the gym, spiritually, with your friends and family, all of it. So they're not mutually exclusive. Like I'm never encouraging people to just, you know, forget about how you look and forget about your weight and forget about all this stuff. But you really need to do that work to balance it out and to accept and appreciate some things about yourself.
Absolutely. And I think it, you know, it really comes down to intent. And we just talked about that, you know, a few weeks ago. What's behind these reasons, you know? And I think, you know, as far as weight goes, like if someone wants to lose weight, that's fine. But it does matter why. You know, what is your reasoning for this? And it also matters, is that the goal, or is the goal to find what weight your body is healthiest at? And that means we're not focusing on weight. We're building a healthy body and letting the weight settle itself out for wherever it happens to hang around when we're just our healthiest version of ourselves. Those are two wildly different things. And I think that's really important, that you know, it gets so tricky. I feel like sometimes it's hard to even talk about, because it's like, I don't want to accidentally say something that I don't mean, or, you know, some messaging that's just encoded in my brain because I've heard it for 40 years now. But, you know, I think with weight, it really does matter. What's my intent here? What is the reason that I'm doing this? And if it really is lying in, I want to be the healthiest version of myself, and not, I want to have worth or value or be accepted. Okay, that's a whole different thing. And I think that that's really okay. So also, I think one thing I'm most excited about this episode, I think this is just going to be Aaron and I taking turns on soapboxes. I really like when we both get on a soapbox.
You ready for this?
It's going to be the whole thing. We get to say all the things we want to say.
And I think the why is really important. And in fact, I had a client this morning say that, you know, they realized that they were thinking a lot more about the why when it came to food and some of their perceptions of themselves and some of their thoughts. And nothing says that you have to give up. Like, if working hard and really challenging yourself and really kind of setting some big goals, whether it be in the gym or however you want to revamp your life, nothing says you can't do that. Right. So you can still, like, really go after it. And that's what, you know, Michael's saying, like, be the healthiest version of you. Like, let's really get, you know, specific on what that looks like and what you want to feel, how you want to think about yourself. People have a really hard time letting go of the weight.
Yeah.
And I think that stems from the fact that we are conditioned from a very young age that weight is like the very basic measure of, I mean, we use it as a crutch too with health. In fact, I was having a great conversation with some friends this weekend about, when we kind of impart some of these messages on teenagers, because I'm working on a program for teenagers, to specifically athletes, to kind of,
Mhm.
maybe rethink this messaging. And one of my friends was like, well, I wouldn't want my kid to be, overweight. Like I wouldn't want that to happen. And so we kind of started, talking about this hypothetical, well, why is that? Why would you not want your child to be overweight? And she was like, well, it's um the first thing she said was, well, I wouldn't want them to be made fun of or to feel like they didn't fit in. And then it was, well, and it's linked to these health problems and
Mhm.
it's linked to this. And I'm like, okay, see, that's a crutch.
Mhm.
So using the whole health, or like, there's a lot of attack on the wellness industry, and um I'm not going to disparage the wellness industry, because I think there's a lot of good that goes on
Mhm.
there. But I do think that the term wellness has been kind of a nice little halo cover for diet and, the,
Mhm.
proliferation of that
Right.
message. But it really spoke to me the way we as a society tend to kind of hang our hat on, oh, you can be healthier if you're thinner. And if you're thin, that just means you take care of yourself, you have a lower incidence of heart disease, and blah, blah, blah. And we justify it that way. When really, the first thing that my friend said was, whoa, I don't want my kid to be made fun of,
Right.
and I want them to fit in.
Right.
That is the key. And I'm
Right.
like, so is it the potential that your child's body would be wrong, or is it the potential that the messaging in society is effed?
Right. And along with that, I think, and this is a hard thing to say and to maybe accept, but I think a lot of times there is, because of this societal imposition of, bigger, bad, smaller, better, right? Is that it's so like encoded in us that I think some parents, they're like, I would be embarrassed if my child was overweight,
Yeah,
because what does that say about me? How does that
sure.
reflect on me? And I think that's a hard truth as well, but yeah, it's really interesting when people, well, I'll just say this. I like what you said. I think it is often used as a crutch. Um, and sort of like let me throw this in there too. So I don't,
Yeah,
so I can kind of save myself a little bit. But it just goes back to that bigger does not equate to unhealthy. It very well may not, average may be unhealthy. Thinner may be unhealthy. Like, we just don't know. It depends
yeah,
on the individual, and it really, really matters that we look at that on an individual basis.
yeah. We use the health halo effect to legitimize our societal rules,
Hmm.
and just how we're supposed to fit in, and what you're supposed to look like, and what it means to, if I mean, I've had people tell me outright that if they are in a fat body, they feel like people just by looking at them, they don't work as hard,
Hmm. They're
they're
lazy.
lazy, they
Yep.
don't care about how they look.
Hmm.
They're probably even go so far to say, like, oh, they're probably not very fun to be around, they're probably a bad partner, they're a bad mother. Like, I mean, and these are direct
Hmm.
these are things clients have told me that they feel because they're in a larger body.
Yeah.
And
And I
I'm
think
just
that's
like,
things we put on people as a society.
whoa.
Yeah. That's really heavy stuff, I mean,
Yeah.
ooh, yeah, nasty.
So I watched a great documentary called Light. It is a document, it's available on YouTube. It's like 45 minutes long, and it's a documentary about rock climbing and disordered eating. And one of the women interviewed, it's really well done. It's a
Hmm.
great video. I'd encourage people to watch it.
L
One of
I
the
L I
things,
G H T.
Light, yep,
Okay.
yeah. And one of the things that a woman who was interviewed was saying is, there's no other feeling than being so light and fluid with the rock. So, rock climbing, they're moving with the rock and they're moving their bodies in ways that they can just kind of leverage their way up this really challenging rock climb. And she was like, there's no feeling that compares to that. It really, truly, like for her, was just this driving force behind her eating disorder. But then she was like, even that feeling, though, doesn't compare to the knowing that I'm taking care of, that I'm nurturing myself as a person, and that I am capable of doing anything that I demand of my body because I am so strong and well fueled and nurtured. So for her, and this brings me to one of our other least favorite quotes: nothing tastes as good as skinny feels.
I just threw up in my mouth.
I know.
I hate that one
it's
so much.
it's the worst. It's the worst. And we can talk about what that does to food relationship too, but
And we could talk about how that sentence doesn't even make sense.
yeah, it's like, but it shows you kind of the origin of this, where this interview with this woman, kind of brings up like that feeling of thinness and being light and what that felt like to her, but then it still didn't compare to what it feels like to actually be healthy and grounded and
Right.
confident.
Yeah. No. And it's just, I think, when someone, if they're wanting to just piggyback on a little bit on, well, I guess it kind of ties into both these. Um, like if someone wants to lose weight, right? If they want to embark like on a weight loss journey or whatever, unless you have like a medical reason for that, then it's probably a good indicator that your health isn't the top priority. You may think it is, right? Because of what society is messaging, but I don't think it is, because it doesn't take into account anything else, and I think we look at, like, so we just have this little tiny narrow lens on health, and it's weight, exercise, nutrition. Like it's these three
Mm-hmm.
three things, and that's all we focus on, and it's this little like tunnel vision on those things, and we don't take into account anything else. Like gosh, we've talked about it a bunch, and we will, I think Aaron and I will continue to talk about this stuff, because we're just, we're beat over the head with just um what's the word, like the opposite messaging, I guess, that I think we need to say the same things over and over.
Yeah.
But
Misinformation and just
yeah,
like
just
misleading stuff.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at how these things relate to you emotionally and spiritually, and your relationships, and how they impact your family and your work and your ability to recover and that kind of stuff, and you broaden that from this little narrow thing to this whole picture of me, that is an amazing thing. That feels great. And I think it, ties into what you're talking about in that documentary of like, when I'm just like actually focused on taking care of me in all the ways, in the whole picture,
Mm-hmm.
it's a very freeing, rewarding, amazing thing, because it no longer is just like, you're not trying to beat yourself into, submission with food and exercise and weight. You're opening yourself up to like exploring, who am I really? What are all the corners of me, and how do I really operate well within all those corners and get light shined in all those corners, and really just look at everything as a whole picture, and how do I nurture and take care of that? Because what we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to do is nurture and take care of this little tiny spot, and we ignore everything else. And when you start to do that, it is such a rewarding and freeing thing. It's just an amazing feeling. And it really, I think that's when people really begin to go like, okay, I have so much value and worth and stuff to offer that have nothing to do with my size, nothing to do with my size in any way.
Mm-hmm. I love that you use the phrase that you shine the light in all of those different corners. I think that's a nice metaphor to help people appreciate the resources they have within themselves when they are seeking some self-improvement or
Mm-hmm.
growth or better version of themselves. And of course, Michael and I get a lot of people seeking physical improvements, whether it's, getting fit or working on their nutrition. At the same time, you can't neglect those other resources that people have within themselves. A lot of people have just really great organizational skills, or they are really great at taking care of other people. And so you can kind of leverage that and flip that into, well, self-care is really important too. How would you do this for someone else? So I love that analogy of like shine the light in all the corners and like, all of the different areas of you.
Right.
And it really does empower people to feel like they are not just stuck on this narrow track of weight loss and why doesn't it work for me? What am I doing wrong? Why am I broken? And that whole, just back to that stupid quote of nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. Man, I can't tell you how many people come to me and really think that food should not be enjoyable. Like food should taste good, people. It's enjoyable. There are pleasure neurotransmitters and receptors that are going haywire in or I shouldn't say haywire, they're going nuts when you eat something delicious.
Right.
And that is a physiological response. Food is supposed to be enjoyable.
Yeah.
In fact, this is something I read, I think just a couple weeks ago. Every country kind of has their dietary guidelines or their sort of I don't want to say government issued, but kind of their widely accepted recommendations on diet and what kinds of foods and all that stuff. Well, the Japanese version emphasizes that food should be enjoyable. Where the hell is that in the American version? It's coming. I think they're getting better. Like if you read deep into the guidelines, it's there, but it is not an overarching message in how we should eat, unfortunately. And when I present that to people, they're like, whoa, really? Like I should really enjoy how I eat and enjoy food and eat things that are flavorful and that they love. Like all the foods that people tend to nix out of their diets are usually foods that they love. And I just like, it drives me crazy that we can't get the message across that if you enjoy food, and a lot of people find that they enjoy even the foods that are purported to be like the health foods or the good foods. They love eating vegetables, or they love eating a nice balanced meal. They love eating, something that feels good in their body and isn't too much of whatever, too greasy or too heavy or too bland. Once you get that satisfaction factor and you really open up to loving and appreciating the act of eating, it is like, that's another, freeing thing, like you were mentioning.
Yeah. Well, and that brings us to like another one that just popped in my head. The whole food is fuel. It's like, well, yeah, but there's kind of implication that food is only fuel, right? And no, I thought, okay, then why do you have taste buds? Like,
right.
Food is only fuel, and it doesn't matter how it tastes, and you can just eat boiled chicken and kale all day, right? Like, that's not how that works. If it's only fuel, then why do people who try to like just use it for fuel have such a hard time continuing to just use it for fuel? It's because it sucks trying to do it that way. Because you're missing out on something that's really important, right? You're missing out on the incredibly wide variety of tastes and flavors and textures that you get to experience. You're missing out on the importance of like the role that food plays in our society, right? Like when we celebrate and when we mourn and, like there's so much more that food is than just fuel. Sure. Yeah. It gives us calories that then we use, for energy and that. Absolutely. But that's just a portion of it. It is by no means a large portion of it. Even it's an equal portion like everything else. And so if we narrow it down to this little tiny tunnel vision thing, food is only fuel, and we miss out on everything else, which makes it all just suck because we're not getting the full benefits out of it.
I love it. I love it when you rant, Michael. Yes, preach. Woo!
It feels good to rant.
You're speaking to me.
I think I've still got some pent-up stress from last week. So
I know, man. Let it free.
Let it go. Yeah.
We watched Cooked again, which I don't know if we mentioned Michael Pollan on a recent podcast. I think he is an author. Yeah, he's so great. He wrote a book called, he's written several books, but one called Cooked. And then he made a documentary out of it. So it's a 4-part series on Netflix. And he talks a lot about this, like that we celebrate with food, and that, food, I mean, not only, here's another thing that I don't think people acknowledge very often, is that food is a basic need. When we think of shelter, water, food, I don't know the hierarchy of basic needs, but food is one of them.
Yeah.
We have to have food to survive. So why the hell do we pick food as being this, like, I don't know, leverage point to that we have to manipulate this, and that basic need that we all have for food needs to be manipulated in some way and used against us and restricted and curated and all of it. Like, it just I still am just kind of baffled sometimes when I hear some of the messaging that people have gotten over the years and how they've really internalized like their relationship with food in this way,
Right.
that they don't feel like they have permission to enjoy food.
Right.
And they associate certain textures and I mean, we get into the disordered eating realm. It's really hard. Like everybody with an eating disorder has a list of foods they will not eat. Like, these are the no-no foods. And as you get into those foods, you start finding common themes. And as you start finding out, like, how did that belief come to be? Well, creamy food is fattening, and it's indulgent, and it's all of these negative things that society has told us that we shouldn't want in food. So
yeah,
it's
yeah. And I think a lot of times we restrict our freedom with foods because we don't have the control of like my cravings and my awareness of my hunger cues. Like we don't have that kind of like, we haven't developed that control on how to deal with emotions and that kind of stuff. So if we don't have that control piece, we kind of have to restrict to freedom with foods, right? Because otherwise it just feels out of hand. And that's why I think it's so important it just doesn't work to just say like, okay, I have no freedom with food. I just am going to eat these things, because we can only do that for so long. That's why it's so important to, like we talk about, look at like, why do I crave the things I crave when I crave them? Why do I, eat a whole bunch of this when I'm emotional or stressed? Why do I not, have mindfulness when I'm eating? What, all these other things. And if we can really dive into that, then we're able to have all this freedom, because it's the food is not the problem, right? It's this messaging, it's these old wounds, it's things we've had beat into our head, it's, habits and routines. And we have to fix that stuff. We have to address that stuff before we can have that freedom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then going back to just quick story about food as fuel, and that it's really so much more. So over the last, Kathleen works every Thursday. She's gone. And so Thursdays are a really light work day for me, because I'm, Lia's home at school and Sophie's here, and I maybe have a few calls and do a few things, but mostly I'm just kind of dadding. Right. And starting maybe 3 months ago or something, maybe 4, something like that. Once or twice a month, every other week, every 2 weeks on Thursdays, we'll go get McDonald's for lunch and come home, and we eat it together, and we sit and we have this, fun little time. And what we're creating is like this, like we're creating like memories, right?
Yeah.
Like we're creating this, like this really special time where it's just, the girls and me, and we're doing this thing, and they want to go every week because it's such a fun thing. I'm like, oh, we'll do it every other week. But they're going to look back on this time and be like, remember like when we were in, everything was shut down. I was home from school, and we'd go get McDonald's once in a while, and we'd sit, and like, this is it can seem silly if it's like, oh, you're just getting McDonald's, but it's an intentional thing that we're doing, something we don't do a whole lot, go get fast food, and we're doing it. And it's this enjoyable thing. There's going to be nostalgia around it. There's going to be this really good memories during a hard time of, man, remember how fun that was, and food is that too. Food is just so much more than just fuel. Is that the healthiest food? No, I could care less.
Well,
Because what is
well, and
it? Yeah, what is it
healthy is a,
not?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you know what? It actually is, because it's creating these wonderful emotional, mental, and spiritual
Hmm.
moments for us as a family. For
Yeah.
me with my girls, that is a healthy thing. That's how I
Yeah.
look at it.
Yeah. Yep. And I totally agree with that assessment. And this was another conversation I recently had about, labeling foods as healthy or not healthy. It's this is a very nuanced kind of thing. Okay.
Mhm.
There's no like black and white categorization for food,
Yeah.
good or bad, healthy or unhealthy. We do know that food is on a spectrum of
Mhm.
nutrients, calories, flavor, processing. I mean, all of those things. So, this is where it does get complex when people just want to be told, like,
Right.
how to eat. And so they do simplify it in their brains by saying, well, this is just a healthy food. So, I'm going to eat
Mhm.
the healthier choices. Well, what does that mean when you eat a food that's quote not healthy?
Right.
How does that make you feel? How do you internalize that? If somebody has gotten to a place where they're a very competent eater and they don't have as much of that moral like entanglement in how they eat, then they'll be able to separate that and be like, oh, I just this food tasted really good, it's
Mhm.
whatever, it's McDonald's. And we know from a scientific standpoint that too much of anything is not good for the human body.
Right.
So hence Middleish.
Mhm.
And
Moderation.
and yeah, and something like McDonald's, I mean, sure, when you eat out, tend to have more fat and sodium and calories in the food because it's highly palatable
Mhm.
and we like it and it
Mhm.
tastes good that way. It doesn't mean that it's an unhealthy thing. It
Right.
means you need to take that into account when you're in the context of your life and your day. And also, what is this food providing me? And for
Right.
you guys, it's this wonderful little, family experience that
Yeah.
is it's a special thing,
Mhm.
It's not just turning fast food into something that we do every day and
Right.
this is a reliable way to sustain your body, because
Right.
we also know that that isn't true either.
Mhm. Yeah. And if food is only fuel, then it makes sense why, you feel guilt and shame eating fast food or eating ice cream, right? Because then if food's only fuel, then it's of course it's a negative thing, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
if we can step back and look at all the other things food is, well, you know what? Having a piece of cake. Have you ever, like, I've talked to people who have like not had a piece of cake. Good Lord.
Hmm.
Oh, the horror, right? Of cake. Not had a piece of cake at like their own child's birthday party.
Yeah.
And you talk to them about that experience, it sucked. Because well,
Yeah.
first of all, they felt like they weren't a part of things, right? They felt like an
Yeah.
outsider, this weirdo who, why are you eating cake? They aren't celebrating with their own child. There's all these other really, really negative things that are far worse than the few hundred calories in a piece of cake, you know?
Right.
So it's just really important that we just recognize, food is just, it's so much more than just fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
calories you count.
And that kind of brings me to one of the positive memes that I found. I mean, I love like having these body positivity memes
Mhm.
or intuitive eating memes or anti-diet culture. And one of them is, I preferred my food without a side of guilt and shame.
Mhm.
So
Mm.
how can we, and when you talk to people about the guilt that they feel, guilt is if you have done something bad. Okay. So, if you break the law, a traffic law, and you get a ticket, you're guilty of
Mhm.
breaking the speed limit or whatever it is. You are not guilty of doing something bad because of eating.
Yeah.
So, and then
Food is
shame,
amoral.
right? And then
Yeah.
shame is a deeper sense of I am wrong. Like
Mhm.
I don't belong or I am wrong somehow.
Yeah.
And this is where, you really get into that deep belief system that people cultivate because of all the messaging for so long.
Right.
Like you don't belong and you're wrong if you enjoy food, if you don't eat this way, if you aren't striving for the thin ideal, if you don't ascribe to these specific, dietary rules or societal rules that we put into place.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. And that's the trouble with the overarching umbrella of diet culture. No matter what you pick that falls under that, is that there are strict rules that you must adhere to if you're going to be a part of that tribe. Right. And then when you don't, I violated the rules. So am I an outcast now? I did a bad thing. And these rules are arbitrary and meaningless and unnecessary. Like
yeah,
these
they're
rules,
man-made.
yeah. And not even with true health in mind, they're made with weight in mind. So going back to original, like it makes zero sense. And that's why it's just so important to just really try to step outside of diet culture and fads and really just like, we've talked about intuitive eating. We did a whole episode on it. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 episodes back, maybe more, maybe less. It's somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But because there are no universal rules for people that are real strict. There are there's what my body needs, my body, and that's different from yours, and that's different from theirs and theirs. And we have to really begin to listen to and acknowledge and recognize what our body needs, how it functions well, how we feel good, physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, all those things, how it impacts our lives, because those are the things that we need to be guided by, not these arbitrary rules of, carbs are bad for everyone, right? Just whatever. Because those are generic rules, and generic things don't work when they're put on individuals. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, or the arbitrary belief that when I am thin, I will have X, whatever that thing is. I will be this.
Yeah.
Like what, and that's a really deep question to ask people is like, what do you hope to get out of adhering to this thing, this diet or this belief system?
Yeah.
And it's hard for people to answer that. I don't ever expect people to just be able to answer that outright, because a lot of times they've convinced themselves that if they're thin, they will have all these things. But then when they say it out loud, they're kind of like, that sounds really silly. Like when I'm thin, I will be successful. What, will you have more friends? No. Will you, be more attractive in some way? Like, I mean, there's so many things that are wrapped up in that, that it's really important for people. And again, there is absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to improve the version of you and to better yourself and to grow.
Right.
What's different is really getting clear on, like what Michael said earlier, the why behind it. What are you hoping to gain from that? And also, one of the other things you said about the whole, fitting into that tribe, and this is huge in, the fitness and diet industry, is like belonging to that group. A lot of groups are value-based. What are your values? What do you ascribe to that brings more to the group and that belief system that you all, ascribe to? And so if you have this belief system about thin is the ideal, and that, I mean, all of those superficial things, and I think most adults would probably agree, at least to some extent, that when you base your belief system and your values on these superficial external kinds of things, it really leads to a pretty empty kind of life and sense of self. So this is getting, deeper into some of the psychology realm, but it is all interwoven. And this is why it's so hard to talk about weight loss and fitness and all of the things that Michael and I do with people without addressing some of these deeper things.
Yeah.
Because it really does get to the core.
Yeah, it really does. And, I think for most people, like if you just kind of piggyback on what you were saying, because I think you said this really well. If your objective is to lose weight, right? Just to lose weight, and that's the goal. Then when you are a thinner, smaller, lighter person, whatever, what's going to be different is that you're a thinner, lighter, smaller person. That's what's going to be different. You're still going to be someone who has the same insecurities and hurdles and challenges and false beliefs and wounds and all this stuff. You're just going to be, way less. That's what's going to be different. But if you happen to lose weight in a way that addresses these things, right? Let me share a story. So I have a client right now who he he's just been going through a lot. Like life's been rough for him. And he's just reached out like, I gotta manage some things. I need to be a healthier person. Right. And so we've been working on like honoring hunger cues and fullness cues, kind of talking through like some of the shame he feels about stuff and how that's tied to food and mindfulness and increasing, like vegetable consumption and fruit consumption, just all these like just good habits, really addressing mindset and awareness and that kind of stuff. And he's lost weight, right? But what he sent me a text the other day that said something to the effect of, like, I looked at myself in the mirror today, and for the first time, what I saw matched how I feel about myself. Because,
Whoa.
yeah, what he saw was someone who has really dove into taking care of me, having discipline, listening to my body, being kind to myself. That's how he felt about himself, but he wasn't acting on a lot of these things. And so he started like making these things like ingrained and habits and really, developing discipline and just really listening to his body. And the byproduct was that he lost weight. Now, it's not that it matches because he's smaller, right? But it's because that's what happened. And that's where his body has naturally gone as he's developed these other things. So he looks at his body and goes like, I know that's what my body looks like when I practice discipline, when I practice control, when I am mindful, when I let myself eat foods freely, all these other things. That's where my body has gone. And I really like looking at it. And that's a whole different way to get to like a lighter, smaller version of yourself. And that's a healthy way, because he let his body do what his body did. Right. And while addressing all these other things. So anyway, I just want to share that.
No, that's a great story. And what a cool text to get from a client. Don't you love like when there's like a breakthrough
ever? He said the first time ever I looked at myself and went like, that's how I feel on the inside, is this strong, discipline, following through kind of person.
That's cool. And it's hard to convince people to let go of, putting the thinness first. And if I get thin, then all these other things will fall into place. So yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
Well, Michael and I could rant all day about this stuff.
What do we do? Like talk about 3 of these?
Well, there's one more that I'm looking at right now that just makes me like, once you see results, it becomes an addiction. I mean, I think
that's how I feel about it.
Addiction. Yeah. Michael's curling his lip and kind of snarling. Addiction doesn't have a lot of positive connotations. So
not usually.
I'm a little bit confused by like, this meme is obviously speaking to somebody who's like just getting started or maybe considering engaging in whatever change. But it becomes an addiction.
Yeah, that's problematic.
Well, we have diagnoses for eating disorders and exercise addiction and obsessive compulsive disorders. And, there's a lot that goes into that addiction realm that I look at that and I'm like, that makes me want to run in the other direction, and also, is it also proliferating the belief that like more is better? Once you see results, that's not enough. Right. You want to keep going, and more is better. And that is, that's a terrible hook for a lot of people, that these changes that I've made, I'm starting to see results. So I want to double down and I want to do even more. I want to restrict more food. I want to fast longer. I want to work out harder or longer. I want to, skip my evening time with the family to get that second workout at the gym. Right. I mean, there's so many things that can come out of that meme that I'm just like, ooh.
Yeah. Well, addiction, I think anytime there's an addiction piece, it's an avoidance of something deeper, right? And that's the trick with like the diet, nutrition, fitness industry is, we assume that more of these healthier things is better, right? If you always eat, less or more vegetables or whatever, and that's better. If you exercise more, that's better, right? But people can absolutely use eating quote unquote healthy and exercise as a way to avoid things just as easy as they can use not exercise and eating less nutritious,
Yeah.
more calorically dense foods. Same thing. It's like it's like it wraps
Yeah.
around and they meet. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
circle comes
Yeah.
together because it's the same thing. And so if we truly become addicted to this stuff, it's because there's things we're avoiding and we're not willing to address. And it goes back to that example I used of kind of looking at that tunnel vision with exercise and nutrition. Like we're still avoiding all these other things, right? Like if you feel like in your home you got to keep, I don't know, the dining room spotless and clean and everything, but you neglect the rest of the house, right? It's like it's crumbling down, but it's like, but look at my dining room.
I know.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of the same thing. It's like you're avoiding these things that your body is telling you this needs to be addressed. You're avoiding your mental, avoiding your emotional, avoiding your spiritual health, your relationships, your family, maybe your job, all this stuff, just so you can be like, but look at how
Yeah.
hard I worked today. I exercised twice, and I got up before my family was up and I did this and I only ate, 900 calories and look how great I'm doing. And everything else is just crumbling around. That's the way addiction works, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, if you haven't listened to the episode with our good friend Leslie Walla,
Mm-hmm.
who joined us and talked about her addiction and eating disorders, I mean, you want to hear a great
It's a fantastic
story, I
episode.
would say, of success, go listen to that one too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, these memes and quotes and sayings, they stick in people's minds and they're branded as motivational. And
Yep.
I take a lot of issue with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have some motivation that is from a positive and empowering place
Yeah.
and helps you feel like I just one final thought is having a conversation this morning with a client that is working through the intuitive eating process instead of the like rigid calorie counting, like limitations, external limitations on how she eats. And she made the comment like it almost is too easy because she's eating all the things that she likes to eat. And she's like, it's almost too easy. But this is after having a lot of conversations to work through
Right.
the thoughts and the belief systems at play and the diet culture messaging and things that have been rolling around in her head for years. And I'm like, but is it easier? And she's like, oh, you're right. Because we're conditioned to believe that you're cheating somehow if you're able to eat what tastes good and what you like.
Right.
So it's not, this is actually really hard work
Mm-hmm.
to, really, you know, heal that relationship with food and heal some of these other, aspects of your life.
Yeah.
But man, it is long term and it's sustainable and it's a tool that you will always, always have with you.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing is that it's, I've known people who have followed really restricted diets for a very, very long time. And you could say they're successful, but you see how it impacts other areas of their life. And I would argue it's not. I would argue it's very unsuccessful. It on this very narrow bandwidth. Sure. Have you done it for a while? Okay, fine. Right. People do a lot of unhealthy things for a long time. Right. That doesn't
Right.
doesn't mean that they're healthier people.
Yeah.
But to begin to be able to look at your relationship with food and uh, who you are to it and what it is to you and what you tell yourself around it and how these kind of messages that are seem to have the intent of to motivate you and get you fired up and ready to go and that kind of stuff and how they really impact you. Broad picture, right? Not on just your exercise for the day, not if it motivates you to go to the gym or motivates you to eat a salad, right? But broad picture. How does this play out in my life and my kids and my family and my friends and my work and my all these things? When you
Mm-hmm.
really begin to look at that, when you look at these messages and you begin to see like, oh, this is really enforcing or fostering some really negative messaging that's already like really been, downloaded a bunch of times into my operating system. I don't need any more of it. And
Yeah,
and I think anytime you hear this kind of stuff, I just think it's really important that, especially on social media, who you follow and what you allow into your feed is really critical. And I think if you see
totally.
messages like this, you just need to unfollow people, like it's just not worth it, because there's already so much of that that's part of your operating system that's going to take a long time to undo. You don't need one more like instance of it. None. I think you just have to get it out of your life as much as possible, because it's already going to be
Yeah.
hard work to overcome.
Yeah. I think maybe that would be a good thing for us to work on in the future, is some recommended social media
Yeah.
accounts for people to follow, because you just shared one last night, I think, that was really good.
Yeah.
It
Let me
was
read that real quick.
yeah.
Let me find it real quick. So I don't know who this person is. I follow a few accounts that are geared more towards eating disorders, and one of them shared this. She's a dietitian. Um, I never heard of her before, but she said this. She said, becoming an intuitive eater, refusing to restrict your body, joyful movement, rejecting diet culture, body acceptance, food neutrality, eating with full permission, and so many other qualities of a healthful relationship with food and body can't be seen in a before and after photo.
Yeah.
And I read that and I was like, whoa, that's like
Totally.
all the things I've ever wanted to say.
I know exactly.
And she said it so well and so
I
succinctly.
know.
It's just there's so much that goes into being a truly healthy person, mind, body, and soul, with yourself, with food, that you cannot see,
Hmm.
and we applaud and celebrate before and afters because it's like, whoa, I can see they're a healthier person, quote unquote. When so many of those people they're settled so much deeper into these horrible, awful beliefs about who they are and their relationship with food, but they get celebrated for it. They get patted on the back like, wow, you look great.
Right.
Okay, I guess I should just do more of this, right? Just
Yep.
sink deeper into restriction and
Whatever it is, but
unhappiness. And this is how I have worth and value. And yeah, versus the flip side where it's like there's so much that can be worked on, improved on, just that goes into being a healthier person that you will never see in a before and after photo, that you will never see on someone's body.
yep. That you will never see if you get your abs made in the kitchen.
Yep. Yeah.
Gag.
Yeah. Hey, nice job bringing it full circle.
Right? Well, you
Wow.
you led us there. I just
No, I gave you the
made
alley
the
oop.
punchline.
You
Okay.
got the dunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
High five.
I
High
was
five.
Pippin. You were Jordan. That's how that works.
Oh, dream team. Yeah. Well, that was cathartic for
Mm,
me. I don't know about you.
yeah. I might be sweating a little
I
bit. I got
always, I
worked
know it
up a few
always feels
times.
good to rant against
Yeah.
um, diet culture.
I would,
Uh,
for anyone listening, I would love it if there are some of these that you hate as well. Like,
oh yeah,
let us
share
know.
them with
Like,
us.
yeah, send us an email at middleish@gmail.com, or, on social media. I'd love to hear them. Or if there's ones that listening to this, you've gone like, oh, that's one I've said, but now I kind of hate it. Love to
Yeah.
hear that too. Yeah.
Yes. we, yeah, you can have a sense of belonging with us in
Yes.
our
Yes.
mutual dislike of
Disdain.
diet culture.
Yeah.
So, do you have a meaning in mundane this week?
Sure do.
Of
To
course
you.
you do. I do.
Yeah, I've been a lot better lately. It's been a
Yeah,
while
you
since
come
I've been like, hey, why
prepared.
don't you go first?
Your life is so rich with joyful, mundane experiences that you never have to think long to come up with
No, I
one.
really
So,
don't. Yeah, that's
mhm.
true. That's true. And honestly, this practice of us doing this every week, it's it does for me what we hope it does for you, the
Yeah,
listeners.
it's kind of
Is
cool, isn't it?
it's really cool because it just like it really makes me take notice of these just seemingly whatever moments, run of the mill, that are just like, oh wow, this is a really beautiful moment. you know? So
Mm-hmm.
for me yesterday, Kat and Sophie were gone doing some stuff, and I was working, and Lila had school, and she asked me, it was about 10:30 in the morning. She goes, "Hey daddy, can we go for a walk?" And it's beautiful. Like, so a week ago, right? Like, we're freezing. I'm like burning
Yeah.
parts of my tree in my fireplace. And yesterday it's 75 and not a cloud in the sky. It's like, what is going on? Right. She's
Yeah.
like, "Can we go for a walk?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's go for a walk." And so we just kind of have this little loop in our neighborhood. And we just went around this loop, and, it had been a stressful few weeks. And, she and I had talked just a few days ago of like, "I miss you. Like, I feel like we haven't connected in a while, like we spent time together and, all that, but we just haven't like connected."
Mm,
And to me, maybe I'm wrong, but how I took that is like, "Hey, daddy, remember that thing we talked about? Can we go do that?"
mm-hmm.
Oh, shoot. Sorry, I'm getting a little choked up. It was just her saying like, "Yeah, I miss connecting with you too. So let's go do this." And to have my daughter do that is pretty freaking amazing. Um, but we just walked around the neighborhood, and we talked about like how beautiful the weather was and how funny it was that it's so nice, and just not very long ago it was this. And we just talked about a bunch of random crap, none of it like deep and meaningful, but it was such a deep and meaningful moment, at least to me, and I think to her, um, that it was just like no distractions, no one else, just you and I, 100% attention on each other. And it was like 15 minutes, and it
Oh,
was by far the best
that's
part of
so.
my week.
Oh, that's so great though. Those
Mhm.
moments with when you don't have to have like a topic or the talk or some kind of agenda.
Yeah.
That's when like that real connection can be made though.
Yeah. When it's just like,
Being together.
I just like you,
Yeah.
whatever we
Yeah.
do. I
Hanging
like
out.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. That's good.
Yeah. It was good. I needed it.
Oh,
How about
yeah,
you?
I'm sure you did. So mine is less sentimental, I guess, but last week I mean we have a kind of a standard rotation of meals, meaning like we have a few options that I mean I almost always have the ingredients. They're easy to throw together.
Mhm.
And then I'll get creative with food, and I'll try new recipes, and I'm pretty good at variety. And I realized last week I had some ground turkey in the fridge, and I was kind of like, what should I do with this? Like I wasn't really feeling inspired, and I was like, my mom's meatloaf recipe, I haven't made that for a while. So I made meatloaf for dinner, just like a very standard like meatloaf, roasted potatoes and green
Mhm.
beans. And Matt was like over the moon happy with this dinner. And just a couple days before, I had had a conversation with one of my girlfriends about how good it feels to make a meal that people love and that they just
Mhm.
feel really, I don't care
Right.
how much time goes into it, but it just feels really good. Like we love
Mhm.
showing love through food. And so he's just like raving about this meal, like it's so good and blah blah blah. And he's just, did it take much time to make? Did it take a lot of effort? Like, is this hard to make? Meaning, is this something I could make? Like, this is really good.
Or can you make it again soon?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wouldn't shut up about it. He's like, we should have this. We should have this more often. And I'm like, that's so funny because it's just meatloaf. Like meatloaf is probably like the punchline meal of like the doldrums catch-all boring country food
I
that
love meatloaf. It's so good.
So then there's a second part to this. After we recorded our plant-based eating episode, I had mentioned I had tofu in the fridge. And so
Mhm.
I made this stir fry. And stir fry usually occurs in our home when we have some sort of random vegetable leftover pieces that need to
Mhm.
just be cooked and made into something. So like I'll chop up some cabbage and throw in I had some snap peas and some carrots and just some random stuff that I threw in this pan and kind of made a stir fry. And I was sort of warning Matt that like I didn't really make a sauce to go with the stir fry. I just kind of used like some sesame oil and some garlic and some different things. And he's eating it and he just again starts raving about how awesome this meal is. And I'm like, really? Like I really thought this was just gonna, I mean, some meals are really awesome and some meals they're
They're
fine.
fine.
Like
Yeah,
they,
they're fine.
they taste
Yeah.
okay. Sometimes you get your favorite and sometimes you don't. He just was like, can we have this every week? And I'm like, oh crap. So I run to the kitchen. I start writing down what I did to make it because I don't usually, I just cook and
Like,
throw
oh
things in a
yeah.
pan. And I was like, crap, I better take notes. So anyway, that was my, it was twofold. One was just that these meals were so, to me, just mundane and kind of like using up food, and it wasn't anything special, but they ended up tasting really awesome to my husband. But then it feels really good to, make a meal that is nourishing and that somebody else really enjoys. Even if it was just a simple, easy task on my part. So
That's awesome.
that's mine.
Yay.
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah.
I
Same way.
know.
I love when, and this is maybe it's selfish, but I love when people really enjoy food I make. It makes me really happy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. Good job. Way to
Thank
make
you.
people happy.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, we hope we made our listeners happy today. Thank you for joining us for this rant session. We hope to have
Exercising
another one soon.
all the demons.
Remember that you can email us at middleish@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram at middleish_podcast. And you can support our podcast by going to the link in the show notes.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for listening, everybody. Yep. I hope you had fun. We had fun. That was a fun one.
Yep. Have a good day.